Have you ever noticed that no matter how much food we have, no matter how full our refrigerators are, no matter how many grocery stores sit within a 10-minute drive of our homes, there's still this strange feeling that shows up from time to time? You're not starving, you're not stranded in the wilderness, you're not fighting for survival. Yet somehow, at 9:47 p.m., you're standing in front of an open fridge, staring into it, like the answer to life might be hiding behind a bottle of ketchup. It's weird when you think about it. Humanity has spent thousands of years trying to solve the problem of hunger, and for many of us, we finally did. Food is everywhere. More food than any generation in history could have imagined. Yet instead of feeling completely satisfied, millions of people spend their lives battling cravings, overeating, dieting, relapsing, and wondering why controlling food feels so much harder than it should. And most people assume the answer is simple. They think they're lazy. They think they lack willpower. They think everybody else got the self-control package, and somehow theirs got lost in shipping. But what if the problem isn't a lack of discipline? What if the problem is that your brain is trying to solve a Stone Age problem in a supermarket? Because here's something most people never think about. For almost all of human history, food wasn't a guarantee. Imagine waking up tomorrow and having absolutely no idea where your next meal is coming from. No grocery store, no drive-through, no delivery app, no emergency snacks hidden somewhere in the kitchen. Just uncertainty. That's how humans lived for tens of thousands of years. In fact, if all of human history were compressed into a single year, agriculture would appear only a few days before New Year's Eve. Supermarkets would arrive in the final minutes. Food delivery apps would show up so late they'd practically arrive after the credits started rolling. Yet somehow, we expect our biology to have fully adapted to this new reality. That's like upgrading your living room while still running Windows 95 in your brain. And the crazy part is that evolution never cared about making you skinny. It never cared about beach bodies. It never cared about six-pack abs. Evolution cared about one thing: survival. If food was scarce, the humans who craved calories survived more often than the humans who didn't. Think about it. Imagine two ancient humans walking through a landscape looking for food. One sees a patch of sweet berries and says, "You know what? I'm actually good." The other eats every berry they can find because who knows when they'll get another chance. Guess which one nature rewarded? Over thousands of generations, evolution built a brain that loves calories. Not because calories are evil, because calories used to be precious. Sweetness meant energy. Fat meant survival. Salt meant essential minerals your body desperately needed. These weren't weaknesses, they were advantages. The problem is that the environment changed. Fast. In evolutionary terms, unbelievably fast. For most of history, finding something sweet required effort. Maybe you discovered a patch of fruit. Maybe you found some honey and got aggressively reminded that bees don't appreciate theft. Either way, sweetness was relatively rare. Today, sweetness follows you around like an obsessed fan. The average American consumes roughly 17 teaspoons of added sugar every single day. 17. That's more sweetness before lunch than many of your ancestors might have encountered in days. And here's where the story gets really strange. Your brain doesn't know that. Your brain doesn't know you're living in 2026. It doesn't know there's another grocery store 5 minutes away. It doesn't know food can be delivered while you're sitting on the couch watching videos about why you're eating too much food. Deep inside, the systems controlling hunger and reward are still operating with assumptions formed in a completely different world. A world where calories were valuable. A world where scarcity was common. A world where eating more when food was available was often the smart thing to do. Which means every time you walk into a modern supermarket, something bizarre happens. You're bringing an ancient brain into an environment it was never designed to experience. Imagine taking a hunter-gatherer from 15,000 years ago and dropping them into a modern grocery store. Not a small one. One of those gigantic supermarkets where the cereal aisle alone looks longer than some airport runways. What do you think they'd see? We see normal. They'd see magic. Strawberries in winter. Mangoes from another continent. Entire walls dedicated to ice cream. Hundreds of flavors of chips. Candy stacked floor to ceiling. More calories under one roof than some ancient communities might consume in months. To us, that's Tuesday afternoon. To them, it'd look like a glitch in reality. And yet somehow the strangest thing about modern food isn't the quantity, it's the design. Because modern food isn't simply food anymore, it's a product. And products compete for attention. Think about that for a second. A carrot doesn't have a marketing department. A blueberry doesn't hold meetings about customer retention. But many modern foods are created by teams of scientists, marketers, engineers, and researchers whose entire job is figuring out one thing. How do we make people want another bite? And another? And another. Researchers studying food behavior have described something called the bliss point. It's the combination of sweetness, saltiness, texture, and flavor that maximizes enjoyment. In other words, the point where your brain basically says, oh yeah, more of that. Suddenly, that family-sized bag of chips starts making a lot more sense. Because nobody accidentally eats 30 carrots. Nobody wakes up surrounded by empty broccoli containers wondering what happened. Yet somehow, people can demolish an entire bag of chips while watching one episode of a show and barely remember doing it. That's not because you're broken. It's because those foods interact with ancient reward systems that evolved under completely different conditions. Imagine designing the perfect key for a lock. That's essentially what many ultra-processed foods have become. They aren't necessarily satisfying in the way a complete meal is satisfying. They're rewarding. And reward and satisfaction aren't always the same thing. That's one of the most important ideas in this entire story. Because most people assume that if something feels rewarding, it should leave them satisfied. But think about scrolling social media. It can feel rewarding without making you feel fulfilled. You can keep scrolling for an hour and somehow want more. Modern food can create something similar. You get the reward signal, the excitement, the flavor explosion, the little burst of pleasure. But sometimes the satisfaction never fully arrives, which creates a strange loop. Eat, reward, want more. Eat, reward, want more. And the craziest part? From your brain's perspective, this behavior isn't irrational. It's following instructions that worked beautifully for thousands of generations. Imagine creating a smoke detector designed to save lives. It works perfectly for centuries. Then suddenly, someone installs it inside a nightclub with fog machines, lasers, and smoke effects. The smoke detector isn't malfunctioning. The environment changed. That's the story of modern food. The environment changed faster than biology could keep up. And once you start seeing it, you notice it everywhere. The giant drink sizes, the endless snack options, the advertisements showing melted cheese moving in slow motion like it's starring in its own Hollywood movie. Entire industries competing for a few seconds of your attention because attention eventually becomes appetite. Appetite becomes purchases. Purchases become profit. Which means the modern food environment isn't neutral. It's actively trying to attract you. That's a completely new challenge in human history. Your ancestors had to search for food. Food now searches for you. It appears on your phone. It appears on billboards. It appears in videos. It appears while you're buying completely unrelated things online. At some point, food stopped being something humans hunted and became something that hunts humans. So let's go back. Long before supermarkets, long before nutrition labels, long before somebody figured out how to fit 7 different flavors into a single potato chip. Imagine waking up as a human 10,000 years ago. The first thing on your mind probably wasn't your purpose in life. It wasn't productivity. It wasn't checking notifications. It was food. Because finding enough calories wasn't something you did 3 times a day. It was a challenge you solved every day. And that's important because the human brain was shaped by that reality. When food was scarce, cravings were useful. When honey was rare, loving sweetness was useful. When fatty meat was hard to find, wanting more of it was useful. When salt was difficult to obtain, your body treated it like treasure. These instincts weren't flaws, they were survival tools. The humans who listened to those signals were more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass those instincts on to the next generation. In other words, your cravings have a family history, a very long one. The problem is that evolution works incredibly slowly. Civilization does not. For hundreds of thousands of years, the rules stayed mostly the same. Then suddenly, everything changed. Agriculture arrived, cities appeared, industrialization exploded, and eventually we created something our ancestors never had to deal with: abundance. Not seasonal abundance, not occasional abundance, permanent abundance. For the first time in human history, millions of people gained access to more calories than they could realistically consume. And that created a problem evolution never had to solve. Because nature never prepared us for a world where food was everywhere. Think about it. Your ancestors had to spend energy to get calories. Today, calories spend energy trying to get you. Advertisements, commercials, billboards, apps, bright packaging, limited time offers, entire industries competing for your attention. It's one of the strangest reversals in human history. Food used to be something we chased. Now, it's something that chases us. And once companies realized how our brains worked, things accelerated. Researchers learned that certain combinations of sugar, fat, and salt could create extraordinarily rewarding experiences. Not because they were evil, not because there was a secret conspiracy, but because rewarding food sells. If one snack makes people come back more often than another snack, guess which one survives? The same competitive forces that shape nature also shape markets. And the result is a food environment unlike anything humans evolved to navigate. A hunter-gatherer might encounter sweetness a few times a month. You can encounter it before breakfast, and before lunch, and before dinner, and during all three, which creates a fascinating mismatch, because your brain is still handing out rewards as if these foods are rare discoveries. Meanwhile, your environment is producing them by the truckload. It's like winning the lottery every single day. Eventually, the reward system starts behaving in strange ways, and that's where another misconception appears. Most people think hunger is the problem, but often the real battle is desire. You can be physically full and still want dessert. You can finish dinner and somehow discover a mysterious second stomach reserved exclusively for ice cream. Scientists don't actually call it the ice cream stomach, but let's be honest, we've all experienced it. And that tells us something important. The systems that regulate energy and the systems that regulate reward are connected, but they aren't identical. Sometimes we're eating because we need calories. Sometimes we're eating because our brains have learned that something rewarding is available. And modern environments are very good at constantly reminding us that rewarding things are available, everywhere, all the time. Which brings us back to the original mystery. Why does food sometimes feel less satisfying despite being more abundant? Because satisfaction wasn't the primary thing evolution optimized. Survival was. Your ancestors didn't need a brain that stopped them after the perfect number of calories. They needed a brain that took advantage of opportunities when they appeared. That strategy worked brilliantly in a world of scarcity. But in a world of abundance, the same instincts can feel confusing, sometimes even frustrating. And suddenly, a lot of modern experiences start making sense. The late-night cravings, the difficulty stopping after one bite, the feeling that willpower alone should solve everything, even though the environment is constantly pulling in the opposite direction. This isn't a story about weakness, it's a story about mismatch. A Stone Age brain inside a modern supermarket. Ancient instincts inside an environment they were never designed to encounter.